the assistant director of the Oregon Screams Horror Film Festival. This fall 2022 season will be screening on October 22nd at the Sunshine Mill Winery and Drive-In Theater in the Dalles, Oregon. And yes, that is right. This is going to be screening on a drive-in theater. You're going to have a classic horror experience out here in the Dalles. Today, I'm going to be talking to Lee Copeland, the writer of the screenplay Oread. Thanks for being here, Lee.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So, Lee, what is the Oread about?
It's your classic tale of a bunch of graduate students reconnecting one last time before they really get into their final stretch of their studies and part ways. And they go up to a cabin to blow off a little bit of steam, and through the hubris of man, they make one bad decision. They don't listen to the rules that were very plainly laid out. Things go south.
Well, that sounds great. It seems like people should really learn. Don't go to cabins. Don't go to cabins. Yurt, maybe, but cabin, no.
Or at least follow the rules.
Right. So what's the influence behind this screenplay?
Everything I grew up watching. Thankfully, my parents were really incredibly lenient when I was growing up, and they let me watch anything and everything. And the only stipulation was, as long as you're able to, sleep in your own bed and you're not too scared, you can watch whatever you want. So, Evil Dead, definitely a big influence on this. Any type of the possession films of the 80s, be it, Lamberto Bava's Demons, and, even Record from Spain, and of course, Evil Dead and all that was a big influence on this. And then, I peppered in a little bit of John Carpenter because I can watch his movies, on an endless loop and never be bored. And I brought a little bit of mythology, being the Oread, which are spirits of the forest, basically. And so I brought a little bit of Guillermo del Toro's, and I with what he does with, bringing mythology into the real world and making it horrific. So
totally. Oh, that sounds great. And it's interesting to have. You're talking about, it's following rules. There's like a sort of a moral complex to these things. It's not all just blood and gore, although demons might be kind of on that level. But what would you say? What would you say the tone is on this? If you were to see it made into a film, what would be the aesthetic? What would be the feel of this?
Honestly, I saw I want to say it was Life Eternal from Ghost, their music video that they did.
Oh, cool.
I want to find their cinematographer, because honestly, like, just the colors, the light, the shadow that they use in that is definitely the look and feel that I would really like to go for in this film. Where you got just almost like a 70s-esque tint to the slightly oversaturated that kind of gives it that really unique look and feel.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. So you have a pretty concrete idea about what you want this to look like. Are there any plans to get this produced to a film?
Absolutely.
Nice.
I wrote it. I wrote it to make it. So
awesome.
It's nothing that I just wanted to type out onto the printed page and send out into the world to see what people thought. I definitely have plans to get this into production one way or the other.
Nice. And so are you also a filmmaker? Do you think you'd be directing this? What would be your role?
I really, really want to.
Nice.
Yeah, I love being behind the camera. I love, sitting down and editing. So it's those, I would wear probably, maybe one too many hats for the production, but it's definitely a passion project.
Totally. Well, for independent shorts, I often hear that you just have to wear too many hats. That's the whole thing. And it is a collaborative atmosphere no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you learned from this process, writing this recent screenplay?
Yeah, honestly, for about 8 years, I was working at a local television station, making commercials and promotional spots for on air, and I was getting burned out. I think the pandemic kind of showed us that life can throw you a curveball, and you don't know what's around the bend. You don't know if you'll have another tomorrow. So I was getting a little toasted, and my wife, she hopped on the computer. She looked at the neighboring college and saw that they were offering screenwriting classes in the fall. So I've always wanted to write. I've always had a bunch of ideas in my head, but I didn't know like the proper format and structure and flow and all that kind of stuff. So it felt like I was beating my head against a wall. And I went back to school last fall. I took the initial screenwriting class, and then they were offering the advanced class the next semester, and I signed up for it. And through that, I learned a great deal, and I wrote my very first original screenplay. And this is it, Oread.
Oh, nice. Well, that's so awesome. So you went from commercial writing that began to burn you out, and you've switched it to creative screenwriting. What was that transition like?
Pretty gosh darn good. I I really enjoyed it. It felt like the best release you could ever hope for. You know, when I had my laptop on my lap and I was just going to town, getting into the heads of the characters. You know, putting a little bit of my own personality into the characters, and putting them in some. I'm sorry to say, some terrible situations because it felt like they were my kids. But yeah, it's a fantastic transition, and it feels natural.
Nice. And I also want to know, when I talk to screenwriters, they often say that the subject matter sometimes stems from real life or stems from a real anxiety or something. Did this screenplay come out of a reflection or a thought that you had maybe during COVID?
I don't think so. I think it really came from just my love of the genre.
Totally.
Um, I got my Shutter subscription. I go to film festivals. I've been immensely inspired by seeing what people have done over the last 4 or 5 years, and beyond. And it really, I was tired of being a consumer. I wanted
For
to
sure.
switch over to be a contributor.
Absolutely, that makes a lot of sense. And it's interesting. You have lots of influences, kind of diverse, also foreign films. Something like Shutter, which you can actually see these independently produced features come out, and you get. I mean, there's tons of stuff from like Spain, Philippines.
Oh yeah,
What's that been like? I mean, you said that's really influential. I mean, do you think that's changing the game for creators nowadays?
I think it is. I know, theaters are on the ropes right now, and they're all waiting for the next big blockbuster in order to turn a profit. But streaming services and I think film festivals and are just reaching an audience that is beyond what I grew up. I grew up in the '80s, and the whole mom and pop video store was how they reached me.
For sure.
And now everybody's got this fantastic opportunity to click a button, and they've
Right.
they've got a world of of options at their fingertips.
Totally. All of film history is at our disposal right now, and it's pretty excellent.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else you'd like to say about the Oread?
Well, it originated as a short story that I was planning on, getting into production and just writing. Basically, just the first act was all I started off with, and then it evolved into a feature length, and I, put my heart and soul into it,
Totally.
and then it turned into, and then I've got a sequel treatment that I'm already working on,
Nice.
and a prequel treatment that I'm working on as well right now, where the sequel will take place the very following day, and then the prequel will take place roughly about 150 years previous to the events of Oread.
Whoa,
Um,
nice. So you're building out the mythology.
yeah, it took a life. It took on a life of its own. Really, it was unintentional, and I'm delving more. Going back into the it's kind of the obscure Greek
Mm,
mythological characters, and bringing them into the real world and making them either benign, beneficial, or incredibly menacing. So
that sounds so great. I mean, something that was started as a short has now blossomed into this big creative bloom. That's really awesome.
yeah, trilogy, and I'm also thinking of spin-offs and all sorts of
Totally.
things.
We need an action figure line. That's what I think.
I would absolutely, Oread, I think would translate very well.
Awesome. Well, I really hope to see that in film one day. Thank you so much for talking today, Lee. It's been a
Oh, no
pleasure.
problem. Thanks for having me, man.
Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Hey, thanks you too.